Spectres, welcome back to the Mass Effect Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots. I'm here with Sam. And Sam, you and I get to join our patrons today to debate which is the best Mass Effect game. And this is going to be heated. This is going to be controversial. Whatever we decide, somebody's going to have a problem with it. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to get lots of terrible comments on the video. It's going to be, it's going to be great. You ready?
I was just going to say that. I'm already anticipating the bad comments, and forgive me, listeners, if I sound extra nasally today. I'm sick. My eyes are bloodshot. If you two are suffering from the tyranny of allergies, then I am with you, because it is awful here in the Pacific Northwest. It's snowing pollen.
Wonderful. But you're doing all right. And we have everybody else who's able to join us this week. I think some people are on vacation because it's like summer now and all that. But we've got Ed Boy and Magister and Turbo and Genesis joining us. And welcome, everybody. On the count of three, go ahead and unmute. And let's just make the sound of your heartbreaking.
The mass relay.
Of a mass relay of your heartbreaking when you finished your favorite game and you realized you were done with it. We'll just make a funny sound. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Go for it.
I don't have anything.
Wonderful. All right. So we talked in the pre-show about how we're going to handle this. Sometimes we go person to person. They kind of share something. Sometimes we go topic to topic and everybody just kind of opens up. We've got a small group this week, so I feel like this can be handled topic by topic. So as we're going through this, if you feel like you can chime in or you have something to say, go ahead and unmute. That'll be a signal to me that you want to say something about it. But we're going to start and just go through the games in order. And we're going to make arguments, whether it's your favorite game or not, just general objective arguments about why this game was good, why it would be in contention for the best game, and then on the flip side, what you would hold against it, what maybe it doesn't do as well. So let's start with Mass Effect 1. The first in the series, the first Mass Effect game at all. It was a huge step forward for its time in the way that RPGs were done, the voicing of characters, the way the story played out, the weight of your decisions. The universe was brand new. We learned about all these new creatures and all of those kinds of things. Who would like to share some of your thoughts about Mass Effect 1? Turbo? I see you unmuted.
Yeah. I'll probably get the least concrete argument. I don't know. In my opinion, because it's all biased, emotional and stuff. Because this is the first. The reason this is one of my favorite Mass Effect is because it's like the first game I ever got myself.
It was the first one that you owned personally.
Yes.
Wow. So this was your first game.
Yes, not the first game I ever played, but it's the first game I ever owned. Did
you buy it yourself, or was it a gift?
It was allowances, and I bought it.
Okay.
Pre-owned, like, because I wasn't young. I was too young when it first came out, but I saw like my brother playing it, and I'm like, this looks amazing. This is what I want in a game. I want to be able to make choices, make my own shepherd, make it how I want to, and then go out in space, and kind of like, and then also I was a little kid. I'm like, I want to find love. Like, yay!
Okay. Right.
It's like I get a girlfriend. Yay! And then when I got older as a teen, it's like and stuff, and I'm like I remember this as a kid. This is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Just got my then I'm like, this is. It was still Mass Effect 2 had come out by then, but I wanted to play Mass Effect 1, so I got it, played it, and it's like, this is just as good as I remember.
Yeah, so it holds a special place in your heart, and I think it being the first in the series, if anybody started with that game, even if they didn't buy it with their allowance and they were a kid and this is the first game that they owned themselves, it's still, I think there's probably a fair argument to say that this was the first time you fell in love with the series. Does anybody else feel like that? Like, Ed, do you have that same perspective?
Not with Mass Effect 1, no.
Okay. All right. Did you want to share something about Mass Effect 1? Something in its favor for why it may be the best in the series?
What I think Mass Effect 1 does really well, in particular, is that I think it has the most role-playing aspect out of all three of them. Because it's not as, like, the one downside to, like, the Renegade and Paragon interrupts from 2 and 3 is that it made, like, the whole system more binary. And with one, I feel like you can roleplay Shepard like a little more than you can in the other games. Like in one of my recent playthroughs, I had a female Shepard whose background was the colonists. Well, her colony gets destroyed by Batarians. So that Shepard, I had a little more racist towards Batarians.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But not like towards aliens in general. She just did not like Batarians just that much because of that.
Right. So you feel like there's a little bit more freedom for role playing in Mass Effect 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it definitely does a lot more. And even in terms of how like you have your powers and skills, there's a whole lot more there that adds to like the role playing aspect.
Right. Right. Does anybody else resonate with that perspective on Mass Effect 1? Do you guys agree?
I don't know about roleplay, but it did feel more RPG-ish to me.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes. Yeah. I totally get what you guys are saying about that. Like the other two games feel more
streamlined it in the other two.
Right. They feel more actiony, and it feels like they pulled back on a little bit of the role play quality.
Yeah.
Because that seems like where the industry was going. They were kind of following industry trends.
I don't fault them for that, because Mass Effect 2 and 3, they made it so more people could play it, which means I had more people to talk to.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Magister, Genesis, you guys have any thoughts on Mass Effect 1? And Apollo's just joining us. Welcome, Apollo. We're debating which of the Mass Effect games is the best by going through each of them. We're starting with Mass Effect 1. And we're talking about the good qualities for Mass Effect 1. So anybody else want to chime in about Mass Effect 1? Magister?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I think that one of the main appeals of it is you get to see Shepard. They've already proven themselves to be a hero or a villain or a person that stands out based on their background. But you get to see them before they truly like elevate and become almost demigod-esque as far as legend goes. Like you see them get to the point where people realize, okay, there's something about this guy. Like, yes, he is a war hero, or yes, he's the sole survivor, or yes, he I can't remember what the renegade one is, but you see him become the truly epic person that he is, the savior of the council, or the one, or the defeater of the giant ship. It's not about the giant reapers. It's not about the giant reaper baby. It's about just this guy is really good at what he does, and we're going to see him do what he's doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's by the time you get to 2 and 3, you're dealing with more and more of the world or the galaxy and the bigger and bigger struggles. Whereas 1 is really Shepard establishing himself. There's a lot of that to it. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Sam, do you feel that way?
I have been holding my tongue until the very end.
Well, you can chime in. Yeah.
Okay. So yes to all of the above, basically, to everyone who has spoken on the positives of Mass Effect 1. I wanted to start with Turbo, his point that, it holds a special place in his heart. If I'm being totally honest, my perception is completely colored by nostalgia and memory. I started with Mass Effect 1 in 2007, and it allowed me to live out my childhood fantasy of being basically Captain Kirk, right? Mm-hmm. Like basically being this astronaut hero, military hero that could travel the stars and bang aliens, and you know what I mean? Right, like, why not? And it was fun. It was like, and you have to put yourself in the mindset of 2007, right? So like right around the time of Oblivion, right around the time of other games, it was something completely new to be able to go to different planets in this, updated graphic atmosphere where you're a third person view. You're exploring these different planets, kind of off rails, right? It was kind of sandboxy for the time. And you were just kind of set free. There was a little bit of structure, but it was largely a freeing experience in 2007. And I really enjoyed that. The world building, we've already touched on that a little bit. The world building was huge. Like, I just felt like when I started Mass Effect 1, okay, I'm jumping into a world, or a galaxy rather, that has existed long before me.
Yeah.
Like, this is well established.
Yeah, I think that's important for a lot of role-playing things, is feeling like the world wasn't just birthed right now for you to play in it. It's been around for a long time. and you're just discovering it.
Exactly. And as far as like first entries in game series go, I think that they did it really, really well, because you don't always have first entries in game series lay the foundation that well. Like, okay, for example, I love the Elder Scrolls,
right?
But Arena was not quite like this.
No, it was also another decade before this too, but decade plus. But yeah, for its time, it was revolutionary in certain ways, but not others. Whereas this was it's apples and oranges. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. So those are just a couple of the really positive points I have about Mass Effect 1. And plus the sheer creativity. I mean, the real creativity of the different alien races, how they looked, how you interacted, why some of them didn't like you, I loved it.
Yeah. Okay. I think those are all really solid points, and we could debate the entire episode, but we have to move on to some of the others. Is there anything real quick that anybody would throw in to say, okay, but this is a drawback? This is something that would dock at some points on my list. What do you think about that? Turbo?
Some of the controls, but that's
okay.
And stuff were, they weren't that well.
That's fair. They got better as the series went on. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. What else would you hold against it? Anybody else say like, well, this could have been better? Jen?
The Mako.
Oh, what was that, Magister?
The Mako.
The Mako? I thought you said makeup at first. I was like, makeup? Oh, the Mako. Yeah. Yeah. Jen, did you have something you want to share?
Yeah, and I know it's one of Sam's favorite aspects of ME1 of just doing planet exploration and finding cool little things, but that's my least favorite part. If I have to scan an entire planet just to get like a piece of ore, that's not enough payoff for spending 20 minutes walking or driving around on the Mako to find like one little thing that's not lore relevant, quest relevant, or pushes anything storyline forward. Having to do that literally 50, 60 times is that was a little bit much for me.
Okay. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. I hear you. But
I'm in agreement with her. I bounced off this pretty hard initially when I first played it.
Okay. So a question for both of you. When did you first play Mass Effect 1?
2020.
Oh, I played it back in, it must have been like 2008. No, it was, I played it a few years late. My wife was pregnant at the time. My son is almost 14. So it must have been like 2010.
Okay, so I have an ongoing theory. I have a theory that people loved Mass Effect 1 more when it was new because it quickly became outdated.
Maybe that's it. Maybe I was looking back at it through 3 years of, other game lenses. But that part, I mean, I think it would be fair to say that if you're going to pick a favorite, then it should still hold up now. Like any of the games that holds up good today would be an argument in its favor. So you could still hold it against it, even if it was good at the time, right?
True, but
it's all subjective.
Tell that to Morrowind fans.
Well, I believe me, we talk about Morrowind a lot on the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, and even Lotus, who my co-host on the show, who's Morrowind is his favorite game in the franchise, will openly agree to like, okay, yes, but this is a problem, and that is definitely not its best part, which is fine. Like no game's perfect, right? Like you're going to find things that you're like, well, this part could have been better. So I think that's fair. All right, anything else against one that we want to throw on the table before we move on? Apollo.
So this is something that Sam has talked about before in other episodes, but it would have been nice to get off the Citadel a little bit faster, because I do know people that I've said play Mass Effect, you'll love it, and they don't get past the Citadel because they're like, I can't. They just quit.
Yeah, no, I remember slogging through that, and the amount of time it took me to get through that part of the game. And once I got there, I was like, wait, is this what this is now? I was like, where'd all the other stuff go? And
on your first playthrough of Mass Effect 1, the Citadel is rough.
Yeah.
I have a friend who who got lost because they just couldn't figure out where to go.
Yeah.
It is definitely rough.
And I was going to comment on the level design. The level design was not it in Mass Effect 1. And, it was actually just when I talked with Zach Scott, who worked on the games, who had mentioned that there was a huge amount of players who just stopped playing once they got to the Citadel or Novaria. And there's a reason for that, right? Like, it was so easy to get lost in those levels. For me, the worst one is Pharos. But the fact is that we can point to multiple different levels in that game and all kind of agree that they were labyrinthine, you know?
Right. And the Citadel also had the issue with just so much dialogue and character stuff in the midst of, oh, I thought this was action-y, and then all of a sudden it just isn't for a while. Like, not even just navigating the hallways, just like how much dialogue, how often do I have to just run around and talk to people before I actually get to go do something else, like shoot stuff, you know? Like it's the joke from the Fallout TV show. Like, I'm bored, I want to shoot some things. Like,
yeah, pacing, absolutely, absolutely agreed. Pacing was way off.
Right. All right, let's move on to Mass Effect 2. We're going to take a vote at the end. You're all going to get to vote and let us know what your favorite is. What is in the favor of Mass Effect 2? What did Mass Effect 2 do really well? Who would like to start us off? Anybody have ideas? Ed?
Oh man, the suicide mission is just, it's so iconic. Like, no, I don't think any other game since Mass Effect 2 has been able to replicate the suicide mission. Like, you know, Mass Effect 2 as a whole, like, recently there's been some debate if it really is as good. Like, the writing isn't always the best. Some characters are like great, others are just boring. But the suicide mission and building up a squad and getting the loyalty to get the best possible outcome from it, and with how many outcomes you can have from the suicide mission, it makes it so phenomenal to play through Mass Effect 2.
I would even
and nothing has beat it.
Yeah, I would even expand on that. Like, that is the climactic part of it, but that also works because the rest of the game is a continual build up to that. Like, it plays out through the story, it plays out through your companions, through building out your team, through the relationships with the different companions, and then there's the big payoff. And so it works like a very unified whole. And
in a way, I do think the suicide mission does help Mass Effect 3 later on, because you don't really get to do anything like that again with when you go back to Elf. I would have loved to see an even grander type of suicide mission in Mass Effect 3. But you know, it's so hard to like say that the suicide mission isn't good, and the whole build up to it is just fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's a solid point. You also bring up the companions. Does anybody want to throw in the companions, like the other characters they brought in as a highlight? Apollo, go for it.
So I was just going to say the character building in the second game. If you get so many characters that you get such deep dives into who they are and how they grow. If you have a game that does that with 2 characters, you're doing something good. And how many do you get that with in Mass Effect 2? 5, 6? I mean, just the way that you can build relationships with those shipmates in Mass Effect 2 is just, it had to be unparalleled at the time.
Yeah, there were other games with companions, but they didn't do it with as many in like a team setting that I can think of. I can't think of a good example of a game that did it better than that. So I think that is a really solid point for it. All right, what else about Mass Effect 2? I mean, there were gameplay changes. Turbo, or Magister. Magister, I saw you unmute earlier. Let's start with Magister, and then we'll jump to Turbo.
One of my favorite things about 2 is the interrupt system. Back to the episode previously.
Right. Yeah. All the cool details about the interrupt system during the interview that was revealed, like how they made that work. Very, very cool.
Just the amount of just times where, like, even if you weren't playing like Renegade or Paragon, and it just like motivated you to get out there and do it, especially like you're working too hard. Like, and hearing about that was just great. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Turbo, what did you want to add to this?
I like how kind of like I don't know if it's the first game ever, but Mass Effect 2 kind of like wasn't like the first game where you could have. Well, Mass Effect 1 did, but you could like have same-sex relationships and stuff.
That has existed in other games before this.
I just can't remember, and that's the first one I ever saw. So
right,
I could be wrong.
Yeah, no.
But for me,
Go ahead.
it was like the first one where like there's so like they had different kinds of relationships and stuff. Like you could have a one night fling with Jack or have a serious relationship. Like all the choices and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Mass Effect 1, that's one of the things I can say bad about it. But you only got 3 choices. Down in Mass Effect 2, you had so many choices.
Right. Different variations depending on if you were male shep or fem shep, and then which of the characters, and then how you handled each of those characters could play out for certain ones in different ways. Yeah, that seems like a big thing as well. Sam, do you want to chime in about Mass Effect 2 at all?
Yes. So character development is really what I thought it did well. The cast of Mass Effect 2 is the star of the show, right? It is... I don't think nearly as many people would love Garrus the way they do if it were not for Mass Effect 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just case in point.
Right. So what about gameplay? What about the actual controls and the shooting and the using the abilities? I feel like Mass Effect 2 was a nice step up from Mass Effect 1 in that category as well.
Yeah, pacing wise, absolutely. I mean, we heard from Zach Scott that they worked so hard on making sure every recruitment mission was like 45 minutes.
Right.
And every loyalty mission was 30 minutes. And that kept things speeding along with the Gears of War style cover-based combat system that it adopted.
Right. Even like on a large scale, the pacing is better because of what you just described, but also on kind of the more nuanced scale, even just being able to aim and shoot at your enemies or trigger your abilities, the flow of combat, a lot of that stuff felt more dialed in from 1 to 2 to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It like unequivocally.
Yeah, and then 3 continued that trend as well. Like it continued to be more dialed in as it went on.
They did some beautification when they went back and changed Mass Effect 1 in the Legendary Edition. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about original 1 and 2, I mean, man, that was a light year jump forward when you're talking about combat.
Right. Yeah, that was a big jump. All right, so let's talk about drawbacks. What are the things that we hold against 2? What could 2 have done better, Jen?
Oh, sorry. I had Mass Effect 2 is the thing that I was going to say about the positive,
go for it.
That I haven't heard yet.
Yeah, go for it.
I felt like my Shepard developed a lot more. The interactions with the squad mates were great, and I loved the story building with all of them. Mm-hmm. But I felt like I could make more decisions that were a little bit more of my own personality type. If I was this Shepard, I could make more choices. In the first game, I felt it was more of, I'm following down this path of Space Marine, and we're going to go out and we're going to do the things. I have my mission, and I'm going to follow that mission. In 2, I felt like, okay, now I'm really learning who my Shepard is. And I loved the personal growth of Shepard alongside the rest of the squad mates.
Do you think that's because there were more interpersonal decisions and conversations that occur in 2 than in 1? Do you think that plays into it?
That definitely has a big part of it. And then, of course, not being a part of the Alliance at that time, being part of Cerberus, where now it's like I have more freedom because I'm not bound by my military restraints.
Right. Yeah, I can see that too.
I think a big part of that too is also the voice acting got like so much better. Because I'm going back to a drawback for 1. Sorry.
That's fine.
Voice acting in 1 was like kind of like weird, but didn't always have the best deliveries. But like 2 really improved on that, and Shepard does have more of a personality in 2 compared to 1.
Yeah, it's another one of those things. It seems like they dialed in a little bit more. They got better at it. They probably got better at script writing, along with the voice actors had more experience. They were kind of more into their role of the characters, because if they were doing a character that was returning, they were, every time you get to play a character again, you get a little bit more in the mind of the character, so you get to flesh them out a little bit more. Yeah. All right. So what about drawbacks? What do we hold against 2? What are we like, this part wasn't so great?
Okay. I've got an inflammatory drawback that I know will spark conversation.
Okay, go for it.
So I'm just gonna go. I'm going balls to the wall. It doesn't matter.
You can put your balls wherever you want. Go ahead.
All right. Mass Effect 2 had the worst story of any of the Mass Effect games.
Just period. Like worst story.
It had the worst story. What was this? Okay, so first, in Mass Effect 1, we are Space Marine, part of the Alliance, the Systems Alliance. We are Commander Shepard, right? Mm-hmm. And we are chasing down this rogue Spectre because he attacked a human colony, and we discover this grand conspiracy along the way, right? And it's not just this rogue Spectre. It turns out there's a way bigger bad, the Reapers. Right. And we get that awesome monologue with Sovereign. Anyway, the thing is that introduced this huge bad.
Right.
And then in Mass Effect 2, it's like, oopsies, we died. Now we got to go kill the turd monsters. Like, what? Are you guys kidding me?
We could just wait. We could just wait on this other thing that was really pressing because we got to just, yeah.
Right. Like, I feel like we took a huge detour from the imminent threat of the Reapers themselves to focus on the Reapers subset of minions. And it was like, and also, by the way, if we're going to get a little bit more micro about it, how much of Mass Effect 2's story actually exists outside of the recruitment and loyalty missions? Like 3 missions, 4 missions?
Yeah, it's like they put that stuff on the side in order to focus more on the companion stuff, right? Like it's from a meta perspective, it's almost like they were like, oh boy, now we have to do a trilogy. How do we get to episode 3? Because we know what we want to do with that in some, overarching kind of way, but we have to get through this middle ground first. So what would be interesting? Well, let's add more characters and have lots of character stories. Cool. But what's the main plot?
Like 75% of the whole damn game.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. No,
come on.
I mean, it's a fair point. It doesn't bother me that much that there isn't as much focus on a main plot, and the main plot isn't kind of the main point of the game. Like, right. The main point of the game is your relationship with these characters and building a team, and then the big mission at the end. Like, that's kind of the point, right?
Like my first playthrough, it didn't bother me, but now going back and playing through it again, you do one, you already know the ending, right? You play through 1, you're like, yeah, Reapers, hell yeah. You get to 2, you're like, fuck these turd guys again. And then you get to 3 and you're like, okay, back to the main story. Like, okay, back to the Reapers. Right. So 2 for me, like the I guess it's primarily the collectors being the antagonists, is like, what the hell? Come on. Like, this is a massive detour. Why do I care about Cerberus? I hate you guys. Come on. Like, I hate you guys. There's so much more important stuff we got to be focusing on than the collectors. Yeah, they're abducting entire human colonies, but like, there's also there's also Reapers who are going to kill everything.
Right. Yeah. I saw, Jen, I saw your hand come up. Do you want to respond to this?
I kind of just want to piggyback off of it going, I think that there are too many companions. And if they had done a few less, don't ask me to pick who I would cut from the roster. But the fact that there are 12 recruitments, that's a bit much. And if they had less people, they could have focused on a better storyline for the main plot point. And then even if the whole point was to introduce all these characters so that way you have your bestie squad going into Mass Effect 3, half of those characters are just cameos and don't really do anything. You have another one mission with them in ME3. So the payoff isn't really there for having this many people that now I'm emotionally invested in, and you don't bring them back for more than one mission in 3.
But is that a dock on 3 or 2 or both? Like,
I think it's a dock on 2 because I love all those characters, but there might be too many of them because what was the point of 2?
Right. Yeah.
Other than introducing all of these people.
Right. Like, where do we, like, if you're going to sacrifice the main story for these other characters and then leave the characters kind of behind on the third one, what are we doing? Yeah. It's, it's just like we've heard through our interviews, there's a lot of they only had so much time and so much manpower, and they just had to make decisions and go with it. And this is where we got it. But yeah, so there's fair critiques for sure. Ed, did you want to add another critique?
To kind of build a little bit on what Sam said, even like the betrayal of the Reapers themselves into is done well. Harbinger is not as cool to interact with as Sovereign. Harbinger is a bit more like mustache curling edgelord than Sovereign. Like Sovereign made me feel dread. Harbinger just, I don't know. It's like I almost want to laugh at him because of how silly edgelord he sounds in Arrival at the end of DLC.
You feel like it's almost on the like anime level.
Yeah, it's like, very anime.
That's how I feel when I watch a lot of anime. Like anime villains are like, I've got my crazy thing and this is my personality. It's all around this one thing. And like things tend to push in that direction and they become overly dramatic about it in a weird way. And you're just like, what the heck?
And to build more on what Genesis said, like the fact that there is so many squad mates, they can't have consistent writing for all of them. So like Legion is only in the game for like 30 minutes basically, because you don't really get to spend time with him. Jacob, you just do not get to know him at all because he just refuses to talk to you. So like just the consistency of the character writing just isn't there.
Yeah. All right, those are fair critiques. Well, we have to keep moving. We've got 2 more to cover, but we also have to go thank our patrons. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Message coming in. Patching it through.
I am Sovereign, and this
Lorecast
is mine. I like the sound of that.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show. We get to thank our patrons. Thank you, all of you, for being here. And our newest patrons, Hawk, Antoine B, I think is maybe how you pronounce that, Mark R, and Hassam E. Welcome to the Patreon. Thank you for signing up and joining us at patreon.com/Mass Effect Lorecast. Also, we have to shout out our Shepherd tier patrons, Ed Boy, Kira C, Lieutenant Tusino, and William. Thank you so much for your support as well. If you'd like to help us out, if you want to check out all the things you can get, like ad-free episodes and t-shirts and stickers and joining us on patron chats like this, head over to the Patreon and go check everything out. Also, you can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We got some new ones that came in. This one is from Han Solus, and we read these out when you leave 5-star reviews. This one says, Keela Sia? I don't know if that was intentional or a misspelling. I'm not sure. There's only one rule on Omega. Don't miss the Mass Effect Lorecast. After being introduced to the game with the release of the Legendary Edition and completing at least a dozen playthroughs, even venturing into Andromeda, I found myself feeling the post-binge emptiness. That's when I stumbled upon the Mass Effect Lorecast and immediately started catching up on over 1.5 years of episodes. It's been longer than that now. Like that, it's been way longer than that. By the goddess, thank you for creating such amazing content and fostering an awesome community. N7, the Legend Sam, is equipped with a Mass Effect knowledge base that puts the Mars archives to shame and always remains true to his original commitment of sharing accurate lore. As a walking, talking codex, his passion for Mass Effect is contagious, while Tom offers a wealth of real-world knowledge and experience, which aids in analyzing characters and events from the universe we love. As a fellow parent, it's always interesting to hear his perspective. Thank you for the last tears. Danny DeVolis and Baby Krogan Battle Buddies. Highly recommend. I should go. Such a wonderful review.
That was very nice. Thank you, Han Solus. And I can't take too much credit because I do have to do my homework. I do research for the episode. So I'm not coming up with all of this off the top of my head. That would be incredible.
Right. Yeah.
If I was.
Yeah, absolutely. But thank you for all the kind words and all of that. We have some other ones, but I'm going to save some time for this week for more speaking with our patrons, and we'll get to some of the other reviews next week. So that's how it's going to work. You can also review the show on Spotify or share it with your friends. All of that stuff also helps. All right, let's move on with the conversation.
Spit it out, or are you trying to build suspense?
You're so dense, sir. Obviously, I do not know as much about human relationships as I thought.
All right, moving on to Mass Effect 3, the culmination of the original trilogy, the most polished feeling of the first 3 in most regards, I would argue. What do we think about that? What are the things in Mass Effect 3's favor? What would you argue? Who wants to start us off? Everybody's like, no. Oh, Paulo wants to. Everyone's like, yeah, screw 3. No, I'm kidding. Paula, what do you think?
I mean, there's a few things that are the big draw for me on 3. One is the gameplay. That style of gameplay fits me perfectly because I'm a story mode person and I can build up my weapons, my armor, everything, and just charge in like a god. Don't have to duck behind anything. I can just charge in, blow up things, shoot everything. That is the play style that I love in a game. Mm-hmm. And just some of the scenes. I mean, Tali's scene on Rannoch is an all-time great scene. And I'm a synthesis person simply because Edie's speech at the end is probably my favorite moment in any game. The speech she gives if you've done the synthesis ending. So just those little things I just love about Mass Effect 3.
Yeah, those are solid points. You also bring up the ending, which was very contentious when the game came out. People were very up in arms about the way it ended. And of course, they added other DLC after that. And even then, people are still debate. I mean, we talk about it on the show all the time. People debate which is the best ending or which one would have been canon, all of that kind of stuff. Do you think that that's in 3's favor, or do you think that's a drawback? Paulo, let's talk to Paulo again real quick. On that point, do you feel like that's still in the favor of 3?
I'd say it's still in favor, but I mean, if you make me pin down what I think the canon ending is going to be, I think their canon ending is going to be Destroy, not mine. But
that's okay.
I like that it's. Yeah. I like that it gave you choice. I like that it let you end the game the way you wanted to, based on your play style, instead of just a one size fits all ending. No matter how you played, I like that it lets you get your ending. Yeah,
that's a solid point. That I would agree that that's to the game's favor. It lets you choose that. Ed, do you want to chime in on this?
Yes. Real quick, I'm going to derail back to 2 real quick. 2 was my first game, so it's my favorite. But I think what 3 does really good is it really does a good job at creating the sense of dread that a galaxy-wide invasion would make. The first mission in Vancouver on Earth, you just see like the towering repulse. On Palaven's moon, you just see the multiple just towering beasts off at the end of the game. It does a good job at making you feel like it's the end of the world. It's really incredible how it does that.
Yeah, it's like a ticking time bomb, and if you don't do your job right, everything's on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, who else has some favorable things to say about 3? Magister?
Piggyback on what Ed Boy was talking about, just the cumulative weight that Mass Effect 3 had of all the different decisions and choices that you made from 1 and 2 coming all together in 3, like having a moment where fearing the genophage, and if you made the wrong choice with Morden's loyalty mission, oh no, there you go. Just those little moments and tidbits that accumulated all the way to that last game, and causing those moments of like, oh no, I didn't do enough of the right thing to get the choice or decision that I want. I didn't do enough, and now I have to choose between Tali and Legion. I didn't do enough, and now Miranda gets killed by Kai Lang. It's just the overall weight of your choices truly put that level of just not just urgency, but agency over what you've done, and showing that choice and consequence. Yeah, truly was something that got me.
Right, Sam. When you did your interview just the other week, that this was one of the things that he mentioned, was that they had these like, oh, I absolutely want to tie up these ends of this thing with this situation, and oh god, this is what's going to play out, and people were like, yeah, that sounds terrible, do it, like let's really grab everybody by the heartstrings, right?
Yeah, by Mass Effect 3, it felt like my Shepard. Like it really felt like, this is my Shepard that I made, and these are my choices, and oh, well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions, and sometimes that was the case. And other times it was like, Oh, thank God I chose the right thing.
Right. Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad I had that option. Whew. Especially later on when you realize like what the options are, like what the actual limitations are, because you've seen other people's playthroughs or you've done multiple playthroughs or whatever. And you're like, oh my God, I could have saved the day and I didn't realize it if I just did something different like 2 games ago or whatever, that I think that's in its favor. Like there aren't that many trilogies of games where you can say like it really does wrap up a lot of the stuff that gets planted, the seeds that get planted in the first 2 come to fruition in the third.
In that way, the conclusion to Mass Effect isn't just at the end of Mass Effect 3. Like it's all throughout Mass Effect 3. Mm-hmm. They're tying up loose ends the whole time.
Right.
So the ending to the trilogy is really the entire game of Mass Effect 3. It's really not just the ending.
Right. Yeah. And I think that is in its favor. I think that is a really cool quality about it for sure. All right. Who else has some things they'd like to say, whether for or against Mass Effect 3? Let's open this up a little bit more. Turbo?
The reason 3 is like the least favorite of mine is because it's a little bit. I like RPGs, and Mass Effect 3 is the least RPG of them all.
In which regard specifically?
Okay, I should say like RPG, like it doesn't. It's not a bad RPG. It's just the least of it because it's like you don't really. It's more of a role play game than it is a. At least I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Does it feel like your choices are a little bit more curtailed because of previous choices or because of the situation that you're in? Is that what you're saying?
No, it just feels more shooty.
Oh, it feels more actiony and less story driven.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's certainly less open world.
Yeah.
It's certainly less open world than Mass Effect 1.
Okay. I'm glad we got to the core of what you're trying to say there so that we fully understand it. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's why it's the least favorite. No, it's not the least favorite, but it's of the original trilogy. That's why 1 and 2 beat it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for you. So you feel like those are more of this has gone too far in the action side of that pendulum that was slowly swinging.
Did get more people into it, so we had more people to talk to and stuff.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Who else has any thoughts on 3 they want to share? Ed?
Yeah, the same thing as Tobo. 3 really was meant to be more of an action game. They were marketing the fact that you could do like a narrative story mode instead of like choices and stuff.
Right.
Then of course the ending wasn't good. It got a little better with the extended cut, but wasn't great.
Gotcha.
It would have been better if the indoctrination theory was true, but it's not.
Yeah, we've talked about the endings before, and everybody has different opinions about what would have made it better or where it should have gone. So, maybe that's. You could say that's a drawback. You could also say that's in its favor. It kind of leaves things debated. People continue to talk about it. So, in some ways, that's positive. I guess it just depends on your perspective, right?
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Mass Effect 3.
Yeah. All right, Sam. Any other thoughts? Or Jen, do you want to chime in? I see you.
Yeah, to kind of pick up on like Sam, how you said that you felt this was finally your true shepherd once you've gotten to 3 and you've made all of these decisions leading up to it, and now you really know who it is. I also feel like the squad mates that have traveled with you from game to game, I had such a connection with them at that point that like I remember when I first landed on Palaven and I got to see Garrus again for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, I still get to play with him in another game. And Liara right out the gate. And even meeting the new characters, I was like, it'll be interesting to see how these new characters interact with the friends that are already going to be with me. So for me in ME3, the enhancement of relationships that I had already built, along with meeting new people to integrate into it, was one of my favorite things in 3.
Well said. All right, Sam, any other thoughts on this?
Positive or negative?
Either way. You just anything you want to kind of put a stamp on before we move to Andromeda.
Positive weapon customization. That was so badass. Hell yeah. Love that. The amount of different items, and I'm a loot goblin, so the amount of different loot that you could get, love that. I love the a lot of people didn't like it, so this is a double-edged sword again, but the EMS system with the war assets, I love that as a incremental showing of how you've changed the galaxy. And of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention multiplayer.
That's true. It's not as big of a thing now, but in its time, it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
I played the hell out of that multiplayer. It was so fun.
Yeah, it was another one of those, like, we need to put multiplayer in order to get more people to play this game. So they did. And, like, people liked it. So it's positive. Yeah.
And, of course, my negative thing, I played Mass Effect 3 right when it came out. So before the extended cut DLC was released, and I was crushed. Yeah. I was like, what the hell? That's it? That's just it. And I don't know how any of this mattered.
Yeah. You mentioned that, and I remember the news outlets talking about it and podcasts talking about it, and people were so upset. And I think it's one of the reasons I didn't jump in and play it right away. It's one of the reasons why I held off until Legendary Edition came out. And it's not, I didn't hold off until the DLC came out. For some reason, it just kind of like fell off my radar. I loved 2. Like, I played through 1 was good. It was good enough for me to pick up 2. I loved 2 with like the way everything played out. And then I was like, oh, cool, 3's coming out. And then the reviews were so mixed because of the way it ended. And I was so engaged with the story and the characters and on that stuff that it made me go, oh, maybe I shouldn't play this, or at least I shouldn't buy it at full price. Maybe, it started putting doubts in my mind. And then by the time the DLC came out and people were like, oh, this is a little bit better now, whatever, I was already on to other games. I kind of moved past it at that point. And so that's why it took me so long to get back in with Legendary Edition and then actually play through it. But yeah, I think that is kind of a dilemma. I mean, if we're taking all things into consideration, then that, was an initial drawback for sure.
If they had added, like a refuse ending where you could just refuse to take any of the, Faustian deals with the intelligence, the catalyst, and just refuse and win if you had like an uber high war asset EMS rating, I feel like that would have solved a lot of people's qualms about it. Like, right, and don't make it easy, right, to get that EMS ending. But that's the point, that like you don't have to take his choice. Anyway, there's a mod like that if anyone's interested.
Well, there you go.
And but that's my qualm.
Turbo, you got a quick thing to add here before we move on to Andromeda?
No.
Okay.
I just blanked out.
That's fine. Right. If you remember, let us know. All right. Well, we got it. We're getting close to the end of the episode. Let's talk about Andromeda. It's not most people's favorite by most measures. But is there anything real quick we want to throw in to say, yeah, I did this pretty good, even if it isn't most people's favorite? Turbo?
A good thing I like with Andromeda is it was a good idea to do a new Mass Effect game without making canon, so everyone could still keep their canon endings.
Mm-hmm.
Of Mass Effect 3, it's like, I know it maybe made people mad like a year. It's like now Mass Effect didn't matter at all, like Shepard didn't matter at all, but it's like Shepard still mattered. It's just not important. It's still going on. You just want another thing, and now you get to keep your canon ending. It's like the best choice I think they had at the time.
Yeah, it's one of those things that a lot of studios debate. Bethesda debates this all the time with a new Fallout game. How do you put on a new Fallout game and not destroy people's canon endings of the previous one? Like, it's something a lot of studios have to deal with. And I can see why they made that decision. It kind of frees things up a bit. Ed? Go ahead, Ed, and then we'll go to Genesis.
So when Andromeda first came out, I did 5.5 playthroughs of it back to back.
Wow.
And I definitely don't think it's as bad as some people say it is, but it's definitely not great either.
You feel like the first three are on a level above it?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Star Wars Force Awakens. It was a good setup, but giving us something familiar, but that came at the downside of your companions feeling like recolors of the ones you had in the original trilogy, and like mix and matches. Like Vetra is like a mix of Tali and Ashley. PB was an Asari archaeologist, just like Liara. And it just, I don't know. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either.
Okay, fair enough. Jen, what did you want to share?
I loved the dialogue selection in Andromeda. I loved the fact that they were all emojified, where you could like, this is an intellectual response, this is a caring response, or this is a response that is, doesn't really have a tone to it at all. And not knowing how Ryder is going to say, or how Shepard was going to deliver a line, made it so that way sometimes you said something that came across a very different way than what you thought the dialogue was going to be.
Right. Or like when you send an email in real life and somebody misinterprets the tone and you're like, oh my God, no, that's not what I meant. Like, sorry, like, yeah, emojifying it was a smart move. You're right.
So that's one thing that I hope gets pulled into any future game from BioWare, is the fact that emojification of my dialogue selections let me know what tone I am saying these words in.
Yeah, it was smart. Yeah, you're right. That is a good point. Anything else we want to share about Andromeda? I know we could probably go down a list of negatives, but just kind of anything that really stood out to you as just like, this part really wasn't my favorite. Turbo?
They got I think I kind of want to say it's the best vehicle out of all three, out of all Mass Effect. Except before Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I don't know how people feel about that, but I think the best vehicle part for Mass Effect would have been the Nexus. Am I thinking of the ship?
Nomad.
Nomad. Thank you. Yeah, I think the Nomad is so far the best Mass Effect vehicle.
Right. What about the combat?
Agreed.
I've heard some people say they prefer the combat in Andromeda.
I do.
Absolutely.
Yes. To be able to mix everything up and stuff.
Ed, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm sorry to talk so much, but
that's fine.
I love the combat in Andromeda. It's really fluid. The fact you can like mix and match like different abilities together or different classes, it really made the combat really fun.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you guys think held it back the most? What kept Andromeda from really hitting for people? Paulo?
So I think this was just another one where you had to get 9, 10, 11 hours into that game before it really got going and you really understood how everything worked. And that's a really long time.
Right. Yeah, that's Final Fantasy style, getting through the first 10 hours before the game even really feels like it starts. Yeah, that's a solid point. Anyone else? Magister, what do you think?
I know it's not probably a popular opinion because I know some people don't care for it, but I think taking out the Renegade and Paragon system kind of hurt it as well. Like, yes, you had the whole emoji thing going on there, but there was something really interesting about the flavor of having that Paragon or Renegade choice that like added that extra dimension to the character that you were playing as, because seeing the Jerry run, you could definitely see what it looks like when someone is not doing as much, doing a straight lace, but if you have those Paragon or those Renegades shouting down moments, it's like really interesting, adds a little bit to the character.
Yeah. Good point.
I didn't hear anyone else bring it up yet, but I really loved the element of Andromeda with the strike teams. Being able to send out the strike teams was really cool to me. I loved the different elements of customization for the weapons and your Nomad and the armor. I loved all that. That was kind of a return back to Mass Effect 1, at least in the feeling of gameplay. And I really loved the variety of different loadouts you could have. I thought they did that extremely well. My main problems with Andromeda were over the narrative. That's an entirely separate complaint, right? And I think Andromeda suffered from a very, very lackluster antagonist. I don't remember much about the Ket, and I don't remember feeling particularly threatened by them, other than them being like a reskin of the Borg.
Right. Yeah, and the fact that everybody looks like middle schoolers, which I always bring up.
You mean Mass Effect, the CW?
I feel like they're kids dressed up as adults, like playing their roles. Like something about the body proportions, or the skin is just too smooth, or I don't know. All right. Well, I feel like that wraps it up pretty well. We have to do a vote, and we're not really voting against each other. We're just going to see what everybody chooses for themselves. And you may have come into this already deciding what you thought would be best, and who knows, maybe this conversation has changed your mind a little bit. But here's what we're going to do. On the count of 3, you're going to hold up. We're all on camera, and so I'll state it out for people who are listening on the audio version. But hold up the number of fingers for Mass Effect 1, 2, or 3 in that order, or 4 fingers for Andromeda. All right, here we go. On the count of 3, everybody's going to vote. Ready? Sam and I will vote too. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, I'm going to go through the list. We have Ed Boy with 2, Magister's 3, Turbo's 2, Genesis is 2, Apollo says, okay. I think that's three fingers. And Sam is 3 and I'm 2. So this came down to...
You look pretty old for 2.
This came to all 2s and 3s. I thought you were going to pick 1, Sam.
So I thought about it, and I think... Honestly, it's just a toss-up for me.
Is it?
Because Mass Effect 1 is so nostalgic for me, but I'm also replaying through Mass Effect 3 right now, and there's like moment after moment after moment where I'm like, I love this fucking game.
Plus
such
there's more
game.
loot and the gameplay feels better.
There's more loot. I am a loot goblin.
There's that part too. Yeah. And Turbo, I thought you were going to pick 1, but you went with 2?
Well, them talking about the companions and all that made me remember 2. So it's like
it's a close one though. I feel like you're on the edge there between the 2 of these.
Yes, it is. It's like, because I just like one's nostalgia. I just like 1, 2. If 1 just had more romance, more like companion stuff, it would win.
Gotcha.
Because the only companion stuff you got in 1 is kind of Rex and Garrus kind of missions.
Right. All right. Cool. Anybody else want to justify their opinions here, Ed?
Yeah, 2 was my first Mass Effect game. I got it on GameFly. Originally didn't like it. Came back to it. Like one day I was sitting in school. I was like, man, I really want to play Mass Effect 2. Started over, and I fell in love with the game. Just fell in love with it.
Yeah, so it's got like that special place in your heart.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Apollo?
So I'm going to make a food comparison with this.
Okay.
So if Bobby Flay came to your house and cooked you three different types of tacos, and you had to pick one that was the best and the worst one is still a damn good taco.
Oh yeah.
And
Yes,
so that's
yes,
kind of
absolutely.
what we're saying here.
Right. Like, yeah, picking favorites. It's like I have 2 dogs, and one of them is I like a little bit more than the other, but I still love both of my dogs. Right. Like, I'm sure some people feel that.
Camera.
I'm sure some people
dogs are just staring at him.
Which one? I'm sure some people feel like that about their children. But just because you have something that you prefer over another doesn't mean the other's bad. It just isn't as good, right? And I think this is a thing that we have to clarify as humans way too often. Just because you have an opinion about something doesn't mean the opposite is like everything else is terrible. Magister or Jen, do you want to justify or share any more of your opinions before we wrap this up? Jen?
Garrus Vicarian. That's why 2.
That's why 2.
And Jack. Garrus and Jack. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Magister?
Citadel DLC. Being able to hang out with all my crew, have a good time, let people let their hair down, and all the other epicness of the game truly brought 3 to being my top spot.
Yeah. Cool. All right. This is fun. I love Apollo's got a little bit more. I love all the the different opinions on this. This is fun.
So for me, it's Edie. Edie goes from being this voice in the ship to a living being by the end of the game, and I love it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think these are all good justifications. 2 is the point at which in my initial playthroughs where I realized that they were doing things that I'd never experienced before in a game. And so for me, it has that special place in my heart because of that. And it had enough improvements for the combat and things over 1 that didn't feel like a slog. It felt like, okay, I'm having fun with all the different aspects of this. So it's now, again, it's not like 1 was bad, but 2 was that much better in a lot of different ways that it really impacted me. And so that's why I go with 2. All right. Well, we've got to wrap this up. Sam, any other final words about Mass Effect ranking or anything that before we go through everybody one more time?
Yes. Just to reiterate, even though 3 is my favorite, and even though I ragged on 2's story, I still very much enjoy playing through Mass Effect 2. And, I know a lot of people, they don't think that Andromeda is a very great game. A lot of people will vehemently defend Andromeda. But to all of our listeners, I just want to make sure it's clear that Mass Effect Andromeda is a canon game. You may not like it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's okay. You don't have to like it, but it is canon. It's part of the lore. And
right.
It is what it is.
Right. Yeah. And until something happens and the studio disowns it, it's canon. I mean, this is one of the things I've learned doing these shows and interviewing the developers of different series. A lot of people will debate canonicity in Fallout, for example, and talking with those developers. They're like, if it's in a game and it's an official game, then it's canon. That's period. It just is. Whether you like it or not.
Curio, canon.
It's canon. That's how it is. So there you go. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. Let's go back through and feel free to share anything you want to put out into the world about things that you're doing or things that people should check out or whatever. And thank you all for being here. Ed, let's just go through the list. Ed, you're first on my screen. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Just on the Discord, hanging around. Anyone wants to talk Mass Effect, I'm always willing to.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Magister, thanks for joining us. Anything you want to share?
Magister DeVita, if you have any questions or any topics that you want to talk about regarding character building, world building, Magister Works is your guy. I'm Magister DeVita on the Discord as well as on the Patreon. So if you ever need anything, let me know.
Very cool. Good luck with all that. Turbo, usually you're like, I don't have anything going on.
I absolutely nothing like usual.
Sweet. Awesome. Consistency. Thanks for joining us, Turbo. And then Jen's got stuff.
I do have stuff. I am one half of the Cyberpunk Lorecast, where we explore the foundations of the past, the state of Night City today, and the news of the future for all things cyberpunk. And there definitely has been a lot of rumblings in the TTRPG world of cyberpunk coming up. They're releasing an Edge Runners edition of Cyberpunk Red.
Ooh.
So very fun times. My other show is the Two Girls, One Ship podcast, where we analyze, rate, and review all that the world of video game romances has to offer.
There you go. Check out our stuff. If you're listening to it on a podcatcher, you can look it up on the same podcatcher and find those shows. Easy enough if you're interested. Thanks for joining us, Jen. And then Apollo, anything you want to share?
I don't have anything going on, but the new season of Rings of Power comes out on my birthday, so that's a nice little birthday present.
Wow, happy birthday.
I did get to meet Troy Baker at our con here. And I asked him about playing Kai Lang versus Joel, and he talked about it for a while. But in the words of Troy Baker, Kai Lang is an asshole.
Okay, it's official. All right. Nice. Yeah, Rings of Power. I'm excited for that. I've been talking about it a little bit in the bonus episodes for the Lord of the Rings Lorecast, which I do. So if you're interested in wanting to catch up with that stuff and find out what is actually going on in the lore of the Lord of the Rings and this TV show and all that, then check out my show. Sam, I know you've got stuff.
I dabble. I'm in the middle of my Mass Effect 3 personal canon playthrough. It is heavily modded. I'm having a great time with a lot of the mods. And a couple of those mods, and one of them I mentioned, the happy ending mod that was made by none other than Audimus. I think I'm saying his name right.
Such a good name for a
Audimus?
mod. The happy ending mod.
Happy ending mod. Yeah. The hand comes out of the screen.
Oh, God.
No, it's not that kind of happy ending mod. It's an ending that is happy. And sorry. Anyway, Audimus, I think that's how you say his name, right? I always mess it up. Anyway, he made it. We interviewed him. And so this is my first time that I'm going to be playing through this mod. It's going to be on stream. I'm streaming Mass Effect every weekend on Saturdays, Saturday afternoons, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific. That's 6 to 9 Eastern. And then I've taken up streaming Fallout in the middle of the week. So I've been doing my Enclave Outcast roleplay playthrough on that one. There's a heavy Enclave mod that I downloaded, and I've been streaming normally Tuesdays or Wednesdays. And you can catch all that on my Twitch at N7 The Legend.
Awesome. Yeah, go check out his stuff. And of course, if you're looking for any of my shows, robotsradio.net for my shows and a bunch of other shows by other people and all sorts of fun things you can find over there. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Chat, thank you for being here. I love all the conversation and everybody supporting the show and consistently being part of this community. Thanks for being here, everyone. Sam and I will be back next week with another regular episode. And who knows, maybe we'll talk more about Liara, because God knows there's more Liara to talk about. But we'll be back. We'll see you then. And until then, stay safe out there. And, play your favorite Mass Effect game. Enjoy it. See you next time. Thanks for tuning into the Mass Effect Lorecast. We'd love to hear your opinion and thoughts on the lore of Mass Effect. Reach out to us on Twitter at Mass Effect Cast, or check out the Robots Radio Discord. Also, you can send us an email at masseffectlorecast@gmail.com.